I was born in 1937 in Memphis, Tennessee. Back then, there wasn't much interest in guys like me. Small, black, poor. All you had was a mom who worked 3 jobs and a dad I barely knew. He disappeared when I was just a few years old. He just walked out the door and never came back. Silence is what I remember best about my childhood. No screaming, no swearing. Just silence. Like an empty house after a storm. I grew up in a world where I was constantly reminded, you are nobody. You are not supposed to dream. You are supposed to be quiet, inconspicuous. And I learned to do that. I learned to be silent before I spoke. But when you're left alone with yourself, you start making up voices. I talked to myself. I repeated phrases from movies. I copied the announcers on TV. Not because I was thinking about acting. I just wanted to be somewhere. I wanted to hear at least someone. We moved from town to town. Greenwood, Chicago, Jackson. Each time, a different school, different people, different faces who didn't care. And everywhere I was just another kid. And everywhere I felt like I was ignored. But one day at school, my teacher made me go on stage to read a poem. I didn't want to. I was afraid. But I did it. And when I spoke, the class became quiet. For the first time, everyone listened to me. And I thought, maybe I can be someone too. Maybe I can say something important and they will hear me. And then the Army. I joined the Air Force. I thought the sky would give me freedom. I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to fly. But instead I was assigned to be a mechanic. I looked at planes, but I didn't get in them. And then I realized, I want something else. I'm not made to obey. After the Army, New York. Theater. Audiences. Working for a penny. My mother cried when I told her I wanted to be an actor. Not because she was against it, but because she knew how hard it would be. And she was right. Most people start with something. I start with nothing. No money. No connections. No name. Just the desire to say out loud what others are afraid to even think. And the stage was my chance. My only chance. It was a life in the shadows. Small roles. Puppet shows. Invisibility. I wasn't a star. I was a voice behind the scenes. A face in the crowd. And every time I thought, here it is, an opportunity, it would be taken away. And I would be left with nothing again. But you know what? I never stopped. Because even when the whole world was silent, a voice was heard inside me. The same one that was born in silence. The one that told me, just a little more. One more step. You're not done yet. And if I succeeded in something, it wasn't because I was stronger. It was because I knew how to wait. I knew how to endure. And I believed that one day someone would say, hey, who the hell is this? I was well past 40 and still a nobody. They didn't know my name. My roles were either unscripted or so small that my parents had to be told which shot I would be in. I lived in a small apartment in Harlem, slept on an old couch, ate rice and beans because there wasn't enough meat. And every day I looked in the mirror and asked, do you still believe this, you idiot? I believed, but in a different way. No longer with hope, but with rage. Not with a dream, but with stubbornness. Because I knew everything I went through had to make sense. Otherwise, what was the point of living? I worked on a children's show, The Electric Company. I sang some educational songs, talked to dolls, pretended to be interested. But it was killing me from the inside. I played a role, but I wasn't an actor. I was a mercenary. I wasn't creating. I was surviving. I was noticed. They said, talented, but. And there was always that damn but. Too old. Too serious. Too black. Too real. I saw younger ones pass me by. Prettier. Prettier. Those who played roles I could have played better. But the world wasn't ready for me. Not then. And I had no choice but to wait. Not for mercy, for the moment. And he came. Not when I was at my peak. But when I had almost let go of everything. 1987. I'm 50. Believe me, at this age you don't expect breakthroughs. But one day I got a call. A small independent film is looking for an actor to play a tough pimp, street smart. There's almost no money. The premiere is in doubt. But I said yes. Because it was a chance. And I've learned, chance doesn't always shine. Sometimes it hides in the dark. I came to the set and did what I knew how to do. I became the truth. I didn't play. I didn't embellish. I just came out of myself and showed everything I had been carrying inside for years. And when I looked into the camera, I didn't see the lens. I saw everyone who laughed at me. All the buts. All the refusals. And I said to myself, now you will see me. After the premiere, the critics went crazy. They didn't know who I was. Where I came from. Why wasn't this a new star? And I wasn't new. I was just finally coming out of the shadows. An Oscar nomination. At 50, I stood on stage and thought, this is not the end. This is just the beginning. Because now I finally spoke, and the whole world was forced to listen. They said, "You're late." And I said, I was just waiting for everyone to calm down, to talk for real. To not play heroes, but to be them. After Street Smart, everything changed. I started getting calls, roles, offers. Directors who hadn't noticed me yesterday were now saying, "We've always believed in you, Morgan." But the truth is, the world didn't discover me. I discovered myself, just loudly, so that it was impossible not to hear. And I spoke, through roles, through pauses, through eyes that were already tired from pain. I didn't have to invent characters. I was each one of them. In Driving Miss Daisy, I was a black driver for a white lady, and we showed America that the heart has no color. In Glory, I was a soldier fighting for a country that didn't even recognize him as an equal, and I made them see that dignity doesn't need permission. In Shawshank Redemption, I was a prisoner with the wisdom of a prophet. And, you know, every line in that movie sounded like a confession. Because it was a confession. Mine. When I was offered the role of God in Bruce Almighty, I wasn't surprised. Not because I feel like a god, but because I knew even then, my voice isn't about me. It's about those who aren't heard. It's about the truth that speaks even in silence. But with all that came the weight. People started looking to me for answers. Hope. Wisdom. And I was just a human. I had my sins. I made mistakes. I lost. My relationships didn't last. My past wouldn't go away. And every time I saw myself on screen, I asked myself, do I even remember who I was before the world started applauding me? Because that's the scariest thing, when you no longer belong to yourself. But you know what saved me? Those same nights when I was a boy, lying on a rooftop in Memphis and looking up at the stars. I wasn't Morgan Freeman then. I was just a kid who wanted to be heard. And now, with millions listening, I don't speak like a star. I speak like that boy. I don't play, I remind. About humanity, about patience, about the power of the silent. Because my voice is not my gift. It is my duty. I didn't want to be an icon. I just didn't give up when everyone else had. And that's probably why I'm being heard now. Okay, it's time to go even deeper, where the cameras don't reach. I thought for a long time about who I should be in this life, and even longer about who I should not be. I was not called for leading roles. I was not written scripts under the name Freeman. I was not given high-profile castings and was not predicted a great future. I was too black, too late, too silent, too mature. I worked on stage when others were already shining on the screens, and when it seemed that all I had to do was get used to the role of the second plan, I suddenly realized that sometimes the world is waiting for people like me, not bright, not loud, but real. And then I began to speak. I was first truly heard not in my youth, but after 40. The age when others give up their dreams. I made it my start. I started again, not with cinema, but with faith. I began to believe in the power of the voice. Not the voice as an instrument, but the voice as truth. I believe that every person has a sound with which they were born to change the world. And my sound was the silence between the words. That's how I started acting. All my characters are people with wounded souls who learned to stand tall even when everything around them wanted to break them. I didn't play God. I spoke for him. I didn't play a prisoner. I breathed for those who no one listens to. I didn't play Nelson Mandela. I was simply that part of humanity that fights all its life not for power, but for dignity. And every role was a prayer for me. A prayer for those who are invisible. For those who have had their voices taken away. For the 20-year-old me who slept on the floor because I had no home. For the 30-year-old me who was afraid that he would never become an actor. For the 40-year-old me who was still holding on, but was already starting to get tired. My life didn't change after one role. There wasn't one movie that made me a star. There were many small decisions. Not to stop. Not to give up. Not to back down. And only over the years did I realize that being an actor is not a profession. It's a state of mind. It's the ability to see the person behind the hero. It's the willingness to be nobody, in order to one day become someone for millions. When I was narrating documentaries, it wasn't just a job. It was a gift. To give meaning to words that changed the world. To give hope where there was only ash. To speak for those who are silent. And when someone says, "Your voice is the voice of God," I think, no, this is the voice of a survivor. A person who was thrown into the abyss by life, but who rose every time. I'm not special. I just didn't break. And you know, when I first saw the audience cry after the movies I was in, I realized it's not because of me. It's because they finally felt heard. They saw their pain on the screen. They recognized their defeats in my eyes. And then I realized who I had become. Not an actor, but a mirror of humanity. Today I am 88 years old. I could sit in silence and just remember. But the world still calls to me. Calls to tell stories that matter. To let my voice be the light that guides others. And you know, I no longer run to the cameras. I don't chase roles like I used to. Now I choose. I choose what my soul tells me, what is worth my time. Because I have learned that true strength is not in quantity, but in depth. My dream came true not when I was first recognized, not when I received awards. My dream came true when I realized that I was able to give people a piece of myself, my voice, my soul. When my voice became a voice of hope, patience, and strength. Favorite role? There have been many, but to be honest, it's not a character from a movie. It's the role of myself. The man who was silent for a long time, but never gave up. The one who managed to find light even in the darkest times. And here I am, not afraid of being old, not afraid of silence. Because I know that my voice will never be silenced. It sounds in the hearts of those who are waiting for their chance, who are fighting, who are dreaming. And this is the greatest gift I could receive from life.